everybody, I'm Tom Alexander. I'm the head of AI at Cross Country Consulting, and this is Field Notes. Today, we're going to talk about creating an AI-ready workforce. And what we're seeing out there in the market is that the technology is outpacing the human's ability to digest all of these capabilities. It is just moving so fast. So there's this massive opportunity out there to stop, pause, re-educate, and make sure that you're getting the most value out of the humans that you have, the innovation and creativity that they can bring to the table. And with that, I want to introduce our partners here today and the folks I'm going to interview from Quantum Rise Consulting, and that's Alex and Louise. I'm going to ask them to introduce Quantum Rise and themselves here in a second. But we believe we have built together with Quantum Rise a world-class training program for our consultants, and we're taking this out to our clients. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Tell us a little bit about Quantum Rise and yourselves.
You can go first.
I will. Alex, I probably should. Yes. Alex Keller, founder and CEO of Quantum Rise. We started this company with the belief that the mid-market in particular needs help on their AI transformation journey. It's complex. As you say, it's moving very fast. My background is I was most recently the global CMO at Deloitte Digital, so solutions at scale. But prior to that, a bunch of startups in machine learning since the late 90s, which dates me, but also speaks to the fact that some of this technology has been around for a while. And what we're seeing today is builds upon all of that great machinery. But there's a lot to learn about. And that's, I guess, what we're talking about today. So nice to be here. Thank you.
And I am a managing director at Quantum Rise. I just joined the firm in January. I've been a consultant for the past 2 decades, and I joined Quantum Rise for 2 main reasons. I saw in consulting 2 big shifts. One is clients looking for ways to use AI in their business and asking their consulting support to not only bring strategy, but to bring the solutions that could be deployed across the enterprise. And I saw a gap in the market to deliver that end-to-end transformation that Quantum Rise looks to fill. And then secondly, I also saw the potential for significant disruption in consulting and changes in the way consulting is done, our business model. And so again, was looking for a place where I could be part of that change. And so here I am. I'm trained as a data scientist. So like Alex, I was using machine learning models before that was a thing. So I'm able to bring that background along with my business consulting background to the work we do with clients.
Okay, some highly qualified guests here today. So thankful that you're here. So to talk a little bit about the training program we built, and we've been at this for a bit, but we started with the foundations course, which we think everybody should do because you're talking about deterministic, probabilistic, some of the basics, but those things are hard concepts. Those are not things that consultants talk about in the CFO space every day, and that's who we're typically dealing with. But I think what's been most popular and what we've been able to create is our Innovators course. And our Innovators course really steps through strategy, value creation, risk and governance frameworks. It gets people's hands on keyboards working with the LLMs and prompting to results. And you can get a lot further than you think with some of those LLM tools, but then understanding where you go next and how you get into agentic AI and scalability of all of this. And it all kind of convalesces into a mock presentation that they have to do in front of C-suite executives, which, Louise, I know you played a part in that, being on our C-suite panel. So that has been fantastic, and we've got just amazing feedback from our consultants that have gone through this. So much so that we're trying to carve off pieces of this and take it out to the market. Also, just train the entire firm on a one-day training with some of the best from that training program. So with all that said, we have talked about now already that the technology is moving so fast. Why is it critical for companies to stop and intentionally pause and get people trained up right now? This technology has been out here for a while. It's been out here for many years, as you both said in your backgrounds, but it's really coming to a head. Why is it critical right now to get the basics right before you go too far?
So I think it's worth grounding everything that we talk about also in why we're doing what we do, which is to achieve business outcomes. And I think what attracted us to cross country was really that focus on, what are the fundamentals here, and how do we ensure those business outcomes, and how do we move fast but not recklessly? In order to do that, it's not really about the tools. It's really about the shared sort of understanding about what the business problem is you're trying to solve and ways of solving that problem. And to do that, and if you don't understand that LLMs are built on a number of historical machine learning technologies, things like reinforcement learning, which was actually one of my earliest startups, which is a very sort of human approach to the world. You try things, and things that work, you do more of. And that's baked into these models so they can improve over time. And understanding how that works, even just a little bit, enables you to say, okay, I understand why the machine sometimes messes up or says strange things, or isn't quite as good as I thought it was because it doesn't have access to the right data in the first place. So all of these real sort of fundamental pieces just create that shared understanding, which allow us to move forward faster, but not recklessly. I'm sure as your teams do, our head of agentic wakes up early and reads probably 5 to 10 articles and some maths papers before breakfast, just to know sort of what's real, what's not, where is this heading, what's hype, what's not. We don't all need to be that sophisticated, and I think we're going to talk about that, but I think it's on all of us to upskill and really close that gap between what's possible and what we know how to do.
You're talking about an agile concept there too, because it is changing so fast. And yes, you've got to read in the morning because you might need to change the training by the afternoon. Right. So that's where we're at right now. And with each new release, it's like, it's also important to make sure you're staying agnostic of these technologies because they're leapfrogging each other. Who knows what's in the next release, and staying on top of that is really hard to do. Mm-hmm. So talking about agility, being always on, Louise, you've described just being always on as part of the AI learning activity, and how does hands-on training empower professionals, even those with deep technical and coding backgrounds, to start building solutions and driving rapid results into their workflows?
So as Alex described, you don't actually need to have a deep technical background to use these models. You have to have some basic understanding of how they work and experience with using them. And then you, just like with anything, you kind of learn by doing. And we find that with our clients, both kind of senior leaders as well as kind of more junior employees, that we will hear over and over again, we just don't know where to get started. And even talking to individuals in my personal life, when I encourage people to start using these tools, they say, well, I don't know what to use it for first. And training can help overcome that hurdle. It can give people a foundational understanding of what these models do, basically how they work intuitively. You don't have to be a data scientist to have an intuitive understanding of how they work. And then just start using them. You're not going to break them. The sky's not going to fall in. You can just start using them and actually create things that are pretty amazing. People are amazed by it. And so that's the reason to do the learning. Now, the learning has to both create that initial foundation, but it doesn't stop, because to your point, the models and the capabilities are constantly changing. And again, that's something that anyone can keep on top of. You don't have to get up and read a math paper while you're having your coffee. You can get up and read a couple of newsletters that come out every day, or go just find something that looks interesting and read about it, or listen to a podcast. And that's something anyone can be doing. But the initial learning provides a foundation for that, and then you can continue learning, because there's also, I always feel behind. There's no end to what one could be learning about and using and trying, and that having a sense of curiosity and interest is critical for business leaders as well as technical leaders that are in this space.
Yeah, so no training is one and done, and we've got to stay on top of it. I totally agree with you there. For one of the things you said, Louise, about just using the tools, it's like you can ask the tool. If you don't know where to start, you can ask it where to start.
Yes.
If you're using the tools and you don't know what data to use, you can ask it.
Yes.
If you don't know what comes next or how this applies to data science, you can ask it. So it's almost like it's all up to you and your own creativity and want to for figuring this out. So I really like that about it, but it's scary at the same time.
I always tell people the limits to the uses of AI are our imagination.
It is imagination, yes, and creativity. And that's, we are having those conversations with our C-suite leaders right now. Like absolutely coming up all the time of why am I running into roadblocks? Why are we solving for an account rec when it could be, to your point, Alex, what are the big outcomes that we should be chasing? So we love to advise on go for a big outcome to start. You can do something transactional in parallel to that, but try to achieve something big because you will learn something along the way. You'll learn where your data is not clean. You'll learn where the opportunities are, and it'll get a conversation going about how to use these tools. So with that, we have been through some of these trainings, and I wanted to get your take, Louisa, somebody who has sat on one of those C-suite mock panels.
Yeah.
Just what are your observations for what did you see in the training as cross-country went through kind of that 4.5-day boot camp? Any observations from that or even some of the readout presentations?
So one of the things I really liked about the training and just watching the teams learn and present their capstone projects at the end of the week was I could see that, as Alex pointed out, people who saw the connection between we have a business outcome we're looking to achieve and we're going to be able to use AI to help us achieve that. So that connection was clearly made. And there was a strong tie to value creation as the North Star, the outcome, the thing you're trying to maximize, right? We hear a lot about AI ROI, and sometimes I think that objective is too narrow because you can achieve it in your ROI, but the bigger prize can be creating value for the enterprise in the longer term. But I saw the teams understanding that. Also, what the teams built, these were business consultants, to your point. They weren't people with deep technical backgrounds, but they got right in there. They were building demos of the solutions that they were recommending their mock clients build. And were they product ready? No, but they demonstrated and brought to life the capabilities of AI and the connection between the business problem they were trying to solve and how AI could be used. So it was, and I think people had fun, to be honest.
It has been a lot of fun. That's the feedback that we've gotten from it, and that's part of the reason we want to take it out to clients as well, is to make sure this does not have to be, a pressure cooker. And I do want to pivot maybe to that in the next piece here, which is what's the human element of this? Like there's this unspoken trust factor that is necessary, and when you bring this to your employees, you bring a training program like this, you are asking them to innovate. You are engaging them in the activity. It is not the threat that this is going to take my job, but that's the hallway conversation, let's be honest, that's happening out there. So as we think about how fast these are moving and with trust being an issue out there, Alex, how do you design a strategy that walks people down a path thoughtfully, addresses the fears, designs for potentially humans in the loop, but just creates engagement in general?
So my one and only degree is in psychology, and I remember one of the first things I learned about is, human bias, which links to both under-trusting and over-trusting, and I think we see that in the market today. Those that under-trust tend to not embrace all the productivity gains and the marvelous promise of the technology, and not just AI, but the whole world of technology. And those that overtrust pretty quickly find the boundaries and the risks inherent. And so it's a question of how do we get people to pitch that trust level right, given what they're trying to do and the technology they're trying to use. there is, I think the process needs to be, and I'm at some level fascinated by how little attention is being paid to the humans that are using the machines versus the machines. I mean, the camera needs to turn a little bit around and say, okay, human beings are human beings, and these machines are in service of us, and what does that mean about how we relate to them? So I think this is a really important topic. That journey that most of us need to go down includes making a very clear boundary about what humans should still want to decide on, and how they want to be either in the loop or on the loop, depending on your sort of take there. And that's, starts with a very structured, simple, just as the training program is, structured in sort of step-by-step format of give the machine a little bit more, assess it, measure it, know when it's going wrong, understand and seek transparency, which is often difficult with the LLMs. They're a little bit opaque, even to the people who wrote them. And then decide where you can sort of let go a little bit and trust the machine. And that is a process that takes good structure and time. That is a governance process, and the beauty of that is it limits the risk, and there is a lot of risk being created right now in the world. So I think that then leads to the right kind of behaviors. I had a very frustrating experience last night trying to, for my dad actually, trying to process a PDF that was, he had to fill in. And out of 10 things that I asked the LLM to do, I won't say which one it was, he got 8 of them beautifully right, and it was just saved me a bunch of time as well. And the other 2 it got like fundamentally wrong. And then when I queried its wrongness, it very quickly admitted to getting it wrong, which is an odd behavior, right? But I sort of knew that I would have to verify it, and that would be part of the process. And those error rates will diminish, but they'll still happen. But I think that that's me sort of setting my trust correctly. I sort of trusted on these 8, but the other 2 are sort of new to question. So how do we get people to that stage, I guess, is the challenge, right?
That's the challenge. Yeah. I'm wondering, for both of you, what are you seeing out there in the market? Are you seeing, push down executive programs? Are you seeing engagement with training at your clients? I know you're dealing with, middle market CEOs. How are people taking kind of a leadership tact with the clients that you're working with?
It's honestly, it's both top down and bottom up. So there are, I would say in the best case scenarios, there is some centralized governance and encouragement, incentive for teams to be using AI, and direction around what specific use cases and the parameters around that. At the same time, every individual using these tools, as Alex was saying, needs to find the right balance of trust along with curiosity and willingness to try things and learn about the models and develop an intuition about how they work. And by the way, different LLMs work differently if we're talking about generative AI. And also with that bottoms up, you get experimentation that then can be deployed in a more scaled, kind of deliberate way. So it's both with the right guardrails around it.
Okay, so for the most part, you're seeing both the top down and bottoms up.
Yeah, I think so. In the mid-market, it's a little more CEO-driven and a little faster moving typically, but not always. We have enterprise clients who are, very fast moving as well. I think the desire or the acknowledgement in that audience is suddenly they might have sort of more ways of looking at the entire organization and the entire business in an integrated, orchestrated way. And so how do I think about how something that's happening in the office of the CFO fits with something that's happening in my marketing team, but suddenly gets visibility and transparency on that, and be able to do something about it. So that sort of orchestration piece would naturally sit at the top. But obviously, a little bit like in the early days of the mobile phone where, they sort of forced you to take a BlackBerry to the office, but they just released the iPhone. So I'm going to bring an iPhone to the office. The teams at the companies are experimenting with tools and bringing them in and saying, guys, we should be using this for this purpose. So you're getting that pressure from the bottom to make things happen, I think.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about just this is, sure, AI training, people using the technical tools, but it's really bringing the C-suite together around strategy. So forcing to rally around the technology, but having a different strategic conversation because, hey, we can have data at our fingertips. What is that going to do to change how we interact with each other and drive our strategy every day? Because I now have an alert that is telling me with some always on 24-hour kind of monitoring mechanism that is telling me that these 3 customers are going to leave me.
Right.
And what am I going to do now with sales and with marketing and at the very top to prevent that from happening?
Well, and the other piece of this is for in some cases, a CEO and his or her leadership team may be asking not just how are we going to use AI in our existing business with our existing processes and our existing organization, but may be asking more fundamental questions about their business model, their organization and operating model. And when those questions start to get asked, then you really do need top-down leadership, and because that there we start to think about things like rebuilding an organization, redoing people's job descriptions. And that doesn't happen in every organization, and is happening, varies by sector, by industry size, by individual company kind of capacity for that. But there are companies that are asking those questions, clients that we are asking those questions, and then you do need that top-down leadership with the CEO driving it. Otherwise, because the experimentation is great, but it probably is limiting in the sense that you're not going to see fundamental organizational operating model redesign coming out of that, at least not initially.
Yeah, not initially. I will tell you, I've heard those questions more in the past 2 months than I did in the previous 9 that we had set up our AI lab. And people are thinking about how do I keep going with either humans in or on the loop. Yeah. How far can I make it without that? And then what does that do cross-functionally when we're all coming together and we all have eyes on these insights? What does that do to my organization as a whole? There's less preparing and moving of data around, and now it's how do we align all of our people strategically to add value? Which leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you all about. And Louise, you kind of mentioned this when you were going through the training program, some of the things you mentioned. You mentioned some of the call-outs on value creation.
Yeah.
And so what we are seeing is that AI ROI often focuses maybe a little too narrowly on the margin impact, the cost savings, the 1 FTE you can save over the course of a workflow. But there's a lot of opportunity out there for true value creation. And when you enable and invest in a workforce, what that could do on the open market. If you're private equity backed, venture capital, what does that do to your valuation? So what are you seeing out there in the market about the ability to AI enable your workforce and what that could do to your value longer term?
When we think about value creation, one aspect of it is things related to productivity, being able to grow the top line. But for many businesses, for most businesses, and especially any business where these AI tools are being deployed, the human element of it is critical to that, right? Are these people using these tools? How are they using it? And then even behind that is what talent are we recruiting, retaining? What skills are we providing them with? And so my view, our view, is that this leads into HR strategy, right? I have a former colleague who 2 weeks ago quit her job at a major information services firm because she said she wasn't using AI enough and she wanted to go find another job where she could be using AI all the time. And that's just one example, but AI training can be part of an AI learning, and AI enablement and being able to use it in your day-to-day job can be a tool for not just making your existing workforce more productive and more satisfied in their jobs, but it also can be a a requirement for recruiting top talent. And I always tell people when they're looking at new roles, you should be asking about how the company is using AI in the business and what tools you'll have access to. My view is any knowledge worker who's not using these tools there's a strong potential of falling behind and becoming less relevant. And so employers have a responsibility not just for their own value creation, but for their workers to be providing the learning and the tools to be able to use AI in their work, and then that's how the innovation happens.
How the innovation happens, and that retention is competitive advantage for you, right? So now you've trained.
All of that contributes to value creation.
Yeah. So we designed our AI lab when we thought of this out of the gate, just thinking through how do we bring the best of the firm and into our innovation. And what we did was set our lab up with some of the best from our risk practice, our data and analytics practice, business transformation and change management, accountants, because our view was that engineering longer term was going to be commoditized or somewhat more accessible, but the business acumen can't be replaced. You have to know what questions to ask. You have to know how to interact, and business acumen is what we're going to bring to our clients every day. And the combination of all of those things is, our value proposition for cross-country AI. So as you think about that is our strategy, but Alex, I'm curious, we've obviously trained a certain portion of our workforce and directed our innovator training at them and have done other general trainings. But how do you think about when you go out and look at your workforce, how do you keep the lights on while also driving some of these training programs? Does everyone need to be trained up on everything? How do you kind of bifurcate what's important and who's doing what?
The last time I saw a change almost this rapid, not really quite, but as significant, was in the late 90s with the dawn of the internet. And, the same question emerged of do we all now have to be able to build websites, and do we all have to change everything that we've ever done? And the answer is, as it ever has been, no. I think, we've chatted about everybody should have some base understanding of how it works and some knowing what to trust and sort of how to relate to it. But the curve of innovation has just, fuel has been poured on the fire. And so it's irrational to think that everybody can stay on top of that. And it doesn't make sense. Nobody would get anything done. And so this concept of having a group of innovators who discover, test, new tools, new workflows, even new business models in a very structured experimental way. And then work with the translators of the company who think about, okay, given what I'm hearing about what's real in the market, how does that translate to our business? And then the operators who just take the bits they need and continue doing what they were doing, maybe changing it, but just being better at it and getting better results. And that structure we see as sort of very successful with our clients. It allows both this agile sort of innovation, quick iteration and moving fast piece, but maintains the core of the business, which is typically something they're good at, which is not AI. So I think the way that we've structured the course kind of really fits tightly with that, and it's very effective.
Yep. So pivoting a little bit here, I have seen some of the creations from our innovators as far as what they're putting forward, and some of the things that we're seeing in the market as well. When teams are really strong, they're starting at the very top and they're starting with the end in mind. And one of those examples and the creations that we're seeing is kind of a single pane of glass, designing for the persona, designing for the CEO. I've even had CEOs, quite frankly, ask for this, which is, can you all help me create my avatar? And that really is, to me, this is the confluence of the technology and the strategy coming together. So that single pane of glass experience, I'm watching my agents, I've got my KPIs on the board, I've almost got like a continuous monitoring concept of watching my business operate as a living creature. and making decisions in real time. So we're all watching that. I'm curious, are you seeing this? What are you seeing some of the more advanced companies doing out there in the market, and how does that relate back to their workforce?
So if we think about the single pane of glass, stepping back, if we think about any business, we can think of it as a set of modules that together interact to create value. And so we're thinking about an operating system, QROS, that brings those modules together so that a CEO, the leadership team, and we can understand how is value created in the business today, what are the opportunities for AI, if we're using AI, how is it supporting the business? And a CEO can look at that to see, how is my business performing? How are my AI initiatives performing? That's the vision, right? And it comes from thinking about the business itself as something that can be modeled and understood using analytical tools, including machine learning and AI. Would you add to that?
I would just say it doesn't have to be an entire sort of godlike company view, which should be great. We are trying to build. But if you think about the RevOps function, for instance, it's a multi-stage customer journey that's always been siloed, and CROs and CMOs have always struggled with it. And suddenly we have technology which can, even if out of a 20-step process, it's piecing together 10 and going, these 10 fit together, and I can track transparently the data across it and sort of make decisions. And maybe each decision only improves that step by %, but after 10 of those steps, you have a real change in performance. So it's a godlike view of a little piece of the puzzle, and that is going to include, the office of the CFO and the CMO and everybody else at the organization to some extent. And so you're starting to get those integrations happening, which traditionally haven't happened. And we're seeing the most advanced players in the market, the sort of world-class, best-in-class players, really embracing that and saying, okay, at least for a function, we're gonna try and make that happen. And then if you ladder that up to Louise's point, you could get to that sort of like self-operating company nirvana.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about, and one of our upcoming podcasts is on lead to cash. And we believe this is the unlock, just bridging your front and back office, all of your functions together, but rallying around your strategy and how you're driving revenue and top line. So more to come on that one. So, I do want to point out and just thank you all again for being here. Like, you have been an amazing partner to us as we've developed this, and taking this training to market is going to be something that we do together and do well together. So I do want to hit on the concept of just partnerships and not going at this alone. So, we believe that. And from your perspective, I'm curious, why is it so critical for organizations to not go at this alone? This is a cutting edge capability. There's so much information out there in the market. There are so many folks that are out there doing their research, but some companies believe they can kind of go at this and get it done themselves. But what are you seeing out there on the importance of partnerships, whether it be through technology platforms, other consulting firms, corporations, et cetera?
I've never seen the importance of ecosystem be as high as it is in today's world. And again, it's this concept of orchestration. If I can orchestrate beyond the walls of my company into the ecosystem with my tech partners, my consulting partners, my accounting partners, like that, then allows you to become a winner in the market. And that's not to say that you shouldn't in-house some things and at least understand what your partners are doing and the value they provide. But it just doesn't make sense for most companies, apart from maybe the very, very sort of top echelon, to try and go this alone. There's so much benefit to work with partners who are working with other people, putting aside competitive pressure for a second. in a market that moves this fast, it feels like the only way to go about it.
Yeah, and I would just add, so Alex is a psychologist, I'm an economist. If we look back at the Industrial Revolution and how we've been able to enjoy income growth over the past 250 years, labor specialization has been a key component of that. And that same lesson applies here. When we think about AI, the range of applications, the pace at which the innovation is occurring, this is a space where specialization makes sense. And where, again, we've been saying no one can know everything, no one can do everything. It's arrogant to think you can, frankly. This is not a moment to be arrogant. This is a moment to be open to partnerships. The notion of a platform that we've all been kind of using in business for the past several years and has become very popular, that notion applies here. And within that platform, different firms can play different roles. And it's frankly, this is, I think, a space where companies that might think of themselves as competitors actually should be partners. And because not everyone can do everything, and you can do more together than you can separately for your businesses and for your clients in consulting, for example. And so that's, so our approach is we're doing something, but we're not doing it by ourselves.
Really well said, and a great one to end on, probably. Just the lesson of partnerships and ecosystems, and I love the way you all phrased that. But really want to emphasize that point as we bring this to a close on Field Notes is don't go it alone. There's value creation out there for you to engage your workforce, get them trained up. We've got some amazing programs that we'd like to share with you and get you on a path towards scalability and value creation. So really appreciate Alex and Louise being here today. Thank you again. And that'll do it for Field Notes. See you next time.